Alright, hi folks. We are now on to section 7 of the syllabus, which is logistics and supply chain. And in particular, this links to the distribution elements of marketing or the distribution activity of marketing, which we would have looked at in terms of the activities of marketing. We're also going to touch things like transportation and how it assists in the whole logistics and supply chain operations. And later on, we'll see how information technology also integrates there. All right. These are some of the things that we are going to look at in this presentation. So I'm going to start with a little case study here just to give you an idea of what really we're going to get into. Alright, so logistics, of course, looks at handling all your materials and your supplies, alright, and making sure that they get to where they need to get in a very efficient way. So here we have a company called Solar Solutions Company, and they deal or they market solar panels. Now, this company imports solar panels mainly from the suppliers in the USA and Mexico. So their plan was to see how best they could cut on their costs, which of course is going to have implications on prices, meaning prices can be reduced. So one of the things that or strategies that Solar Solutions decided was to hire a market research consultant to give them some idea on how best they could cut their costs. And one of the main suggestions that this consultant came up with was logistics. So, logistics, as they recommended, if applied effectively by the company Solar Solutions, is going to get costs to a lower level, therefore allowing them to have more competitive price. Right now, as we know, solar panels are a very competitive product with many businesses offering. So, as a company, they would want to remain competitive by offering good prices so that they can draw customers to them. So, the main plan now that the company would have laid out is, or their idea or thinking is that how can we get our shipment from the USA and Mexico to come in at the same time to our logistics hub, which is where all the shipments are stored in order to be distributed to the next point. So to get these in together at the hub so that it will be ready, right, to be shipped off to the Caribbean countries, which are the markets that this product is being offered. And if that can be handled through this whole logistics process, then the company will be able to cut on their costs. So we see here that logistics and managing of your supply chain gives you a good opportunity to cut your costs, which in turn will give you more competitive prices and, of course, give you a chance to raise greater profits for your business, right? So, efficient logistics and supply chain operations is very important. So, seeing that we have looked at the impact in a summary, looking at this case study, we're now going to delve into exactly is logistics and supply chain operations about. So, as I mentioned a while ago, logistics is the flow of funds, goods meaning raw materials and supplies, right, between the origin and the point of consumption. So the origin will be the point where it comes from, meaning your suppliers, and the point, the consumption point will be, of course, to the end consumer. Logistics not only involves material handling, but it also involves information flowing from one point to the next. It involves production, packaging, inventory, transportation, warehousing, and even security measures. Right? So logistics in a nutshell involves getting those resources and products, right, to where the customers want them in a very efficient way and through efficient operations. And at the end of this presentation, there are some videos which shows you some of the main companies um, that pay keen attention to logistics or invest heavily in logistics, like Amazon and FedEx, right? And they utilize efficient logistics measures that allows them to get goods effectively and efficiently to consumers, right? We have things like 1 day shipping and 2 day shipping, and all of these are possible because of proper management of the logistics process. So, what are the components of logistics? Now, logistics involves multiple components. First of all, we have forward flow and reverse flow. So, we know that goods move forward, meaning to the consumer, right, from the suppliers to the manufacturer. Then it goes through the distribution centers or points, gets to the different middlemen like wholesalers, retailers, and then it gets to the end user. And then there is a reverse flow, right, in the logistics process where goods can come back from the end user. So take for instance, you order something from one of the middlemen, like a retailer, right, Amazon, and that product is no longer, maybe it's damaged through transport, then you have the opportunity to return through the policy of that company. So that will be a reverse flow of the goods coming back to the manufacturer. And then maybe the retailer, based on the link with the manufacturer, whatever operation they have going, that could get back to the next point, right? So forward flow and reverse flow are two main components that are involved in the logistics process. Right? So as I said, forward flow, right? That involves getting the goods from the point of origin to the point of consumption, which is the consumer point. And reverse flow is where the goods move backwards, right? From the consumer to the earlier points of origin, right? So damaged goods, let's say you bought a computer from a retailer, that is now going to be sent back. And there are a lot of companies that have, like Amazon, for instance, they have different centers that handles different aspects of these logistics components. So, for instance, they have centers that are responsible for um, the storage. They have centers that are responsible for the sorting. They have centers that are responsible for returns of goods from consumers and all of this, right? And that is all necessary because it is such a large operation or production process that they have to um, departmentalize, in the sense, have separate areas, functional areas, that will be responsible for efficiently managing that process, right? There are even companies that um, recapture certain goods, right, for recycling or for, let's say, for like in the case of a computer, right? Sometimes you see recalls, not recalls, but you can return certain goods and then they would restore it and then they resell it, right? So you have refurbished computers that are sold on the market, right? And this is all because they come back or are returned, right, as damaged properties, and then they refurbished and sold again. So you can purchase used computers from some e-retailers. You can purchase refurbished computers, right, just as how you purchase new computers. So that is all possible through the return or reverse flow. Then you have companies that do recycling of products, right? So let's say a bottling company, right, like a brewery, they sell their product through the forward flow, passes through the different points, and then the consumer returns the bottle. Yeah? Or let's say like cooking gas, you use the product, then they return the empty bottle. So they could recycle it and use it again. right? So the reverse flow are including all these examples. Another component of logistics is warehousing. Now, of course, with the movement of all these goods and raw materials, etc., you must have warehousing facilities in place for storage of the goods, right? And this involves the inbound and the outbound functions. So the warehouse is first going to store what comes in from your suppliers, manufacturers, inbound, and then you have the outbound, they handle what goes out. So from the warehouse, it goes to the different distribution points so that it gets to the consumer. Now, the warehousing is very important because one, it ensures that the goods are available when needed. So that storage facility provides access to goods at the point that it is needed. And also it extends the life cycle of the goods. So that is very important. Right? Warehouses are built with multiple functions like refrigeration storage, you know, temperature control storage so that goods have a longer life cycle, right? Warehousing also helps to maintain price stability because if the goods are not available on demand, that could affect the price, right? So by having it available, you ensure that supply is always able to meet demand without having any shortage in the market. And of course, it helps to manage inventory, right? So by it being able to meet customer demands, in a sense, you also get to manage your costs and not having to always have to order goods um, when the customer needs it, but you have it stored there because you would have ordered these in bulk and store it, being making it available, sorry, when customers need it. And that has cost benefits for you. Then we have insurance, another component of logistics, right? So there are risks involved in the logistics, and that involves risk when goods are transported, risk when goods are stored, and the risk that involves other persons, parties that are involved in the whole process, like employees, for instance, right? And your physical assets. So you need to also look at that component of logistics. Logistics also involve the financial and information flow. So yes, the goods and the materials flow, but also the information flows, right? And that is why you have all these documents like orders and advice notes and invoice and receipts and delivery notes, right? A lot of these are also electronic um, distributed. So that contains the information that flows along with the goods, right? Or sometimes before the goods um, is distributed, right? And financial, of course, that will be the payments that also flows between the different points in the logistics process. So this here shows exactly how information material flows, right? So goods shipped from one point to the next until the customer purchases it. The customer, who's the one demanding it, is going to make the order and at some point make payment, right? And that whole process causes, demand to exist, and therefore manufacturers are able to supply to meet that demand, right? Good. So now we move on to supply chain operations. Now, supply chain is the management of the flow of goods and services from supplier to customer. However, supply chain is very broad and involves some key aspects, right? So, one, supply chain involves transforming natural resources. So, remember, we just said logistics handles getting the raw materials from one point to the next. Supply chain, on the other hand, involves transforming those natural resources, right? Once those are also transformed, you also need storage movement, right? So storage facilities, as we said, which is handled by logistics, we need movement of that storage. We need storage facilities, as we said, warehousing. We also need um, the processing of those materials, which is where the product is made, and then After that product is made and stored, we need delivery of that product to the consumer. So this here entails the whole supply chain operation, which extends beyond just movement of the goods and storage of the goods, as we said with logistics, but it involves management of those flow of goods from the point of where raw materials are transformed into products, stored, and delivered to the consumer. So transformation of the natural resources, this involves the extraction process, right? As we said when we looked at the different types of production. So the extraction process would be getting the raw materials in its raw state. And then you have to move those raw materials from one point to the next, right? To warehousing facilities where it can be used later in the processing phase, where the final product is going to be made from the conversion process, sorry, of those raw materials, right? So for instance, you have um, fruits, right, being transformed into a product like jellies. You have raisins, yeah. You have many different final products that can be made. So all of that is possible through the supply chain operation. And then you have the storage of the work in progress. Work in progress means the good has started being processed but is not finished. So it's work in progress. And then you have the finished good, which is the finished packaged good that is ready to be distributed and sold, which is also going to be stored, right? Once these are completed, meaning processed and stored, it is then in a state where it can be distributed to wholesalers or retailers so that consumers can purchase. Then we have the delivery phase of supply chain. So this involves basically the distribution chain. All right, now a distribution chain involves different links that gets the product to the consumer. And we are all familiar with this because we are the consumers at the end point here. So how do we get our products? There are different ways we can get our products, and this is what the distribution channel or chain means. How do manufacturers get products over to the end user? So we have the direct and the indirect methods. The direct method basically involves the consumer getting the product directly from you, the manufacturer or the producer. So there is no middlemen or intermediaries that is being used to transfer that product or sell that product to the consumer. A typical example, an insurance company. So there's no middle person here, right? You go straight to the company and that is sold to the consumer. Now, it doesn't mean that you cannot have a middleman, but it simply means that they decide that is the chain that they want to use, right, as a company. Then we have another link, which is from the producer, it's sold to a retailer who then sells it to a consumer. And we find this again very popular with consumer goods. Let's say you want to purchase a TV, you don't go straight to the TV factory. You might purchase that from a retailer like, let's say, Courts, or another business that would have bought it from the producer, right? And these here are indirect methods. Why? Because it is not directly from the producer. And then we have a longer chain, which involves two links between the consumer and the producer. So it is sold to a wholesaler, right? And they sell in larger bulks. And then it is sold to a retailer. The retailer breaks it in smaller quantities, so you purchase it in small amounts. It's like you buy one unit or a little more than one, right? And then it is sold to you, the consumer. Typical example, goods like food items, right? So you go, it's sold to a wholesaler who sells it in bulk. Wholesalers sell it to retailers like supermarkets, and then we, the consumer, buy it from that retailer, right? So these are the main channels that are used. However, we do other channels that are available. For instance, there's a hybrid channel, which is a multi-channel, meaning companies utilize both direct and indirect. And we see that there are some businesses that do utilize the hybrid channel. So they do not depend on one method or one channel, they use multiple channels. This also involves the use of agents, sales agents, right? So, for instance, you can have an insurance company hiring the services of freelance agents, yeah, and these people go out to sell policies, and they get paid based on that job that they do, right? Or you have agents or brokers who work in between the producer and wholesalers and retailers, right? Or distributors or dealers, let's say like vehicle um, manufacturers. You have dealers, right, who distribute the product on behalf of the manufacturer, right, and not necessarily using a direct link. So this is an example of the supply chain model of Apple, right? And that company sources their main product. Remember, we talked about the raw materials. So that is sourced from these countries here: United States, China, Asian countries, and Europe. Then we have the transforming process of the raw materials. So that is done and assembled in China. Remember, we have the storage, which is the warehousing. So they use intermediate warehouses, right? And a lot of companies now, they are not building their own warehouses, or they may have warehouses, but it's not able to hold the capacity of what they produce. So they outsource, meaning they hire the services of other companies that can do that aspect of the supply chain for them, right? So, like Apple may utilize intermediate warehouses via UPS, FedEx, warehouse facilities that they own in other countries, or they may hire the warehousing services of other companies. Then we have the distribution component of the supply chain, right? And they use online store, right? So you can buy directly from them. They have retail stores. Sometimes companies do own their own retail stores, so that is also direct, right? Direct sales force, persons may go out there and sell directly, right? So we see here the company is utilizing a lot of direct methods, but it is also a hybrid method because they have wholesalers, retailers, and network carriers who also provide the product and services, right? And then we have the return aspect of the supply chain, right? So goods, they offer warranty, return trading program, recycle, reuse program, right? So this is the supply chain model of Apple. Right, so now that we know what logistics and supply chain mean, right? Remember, we've been talking a lot about goods movement. A lot of being referred to in relation to movement of goods and materials and storage, and how do we get these things moving, right? Obviously, transport plays a big role here. So transportation is the activity facilitating the movement of goods, right, from one point to the next. So when the raw materials come from the suppliers to the manufacturer, there has to be transport. When it gets from the manufacturing plant to the storage unit, if it's another hub that is being used for storage, or another company that is being used for storage, there has to be transport. When it gets from the distribution centers to the consumer, there has to be transport. So transport plays a very important part in getting the raw materials to where they need to be produced and processed, and also getting it distributed for consumption by the consumer. So there are different types of transportation, and they are categorized based on what level of contracts are available and the number of carriers available. So we have a first um, category called intermodal, and this is the movement of cargo from origin to destination using several modes, right? So several modes are used for transporting the goods. However, each of these modes have a different transport provider, right? So a different company is responsible for each mode of transport, and each of them have their own contract. right? So let's take a typical example. You're an exporter and you're responsible for packing a container to from the US, right, and getting that container to Grenada. And we see that happening a lot, right? Containers coming from one point to the next. So let's say that container came from the US. Now, in the US, you are the exporter and you're responsible for getting that container to Grenada. So you are put in charge, or you are hired to handle that process, right, of the supply chain. Now, there are different modes that can be used here, obviously, right? So you might be in a certain area or state in the US, and to get it from one point, let's say in a state, right? And if you're shipping the goods by sea, based on the type of good, maybe it's bulky, heavy goods, because we're talking containers here. So it has to be shipment by sea. So you're going to first, right? How they from inner state to coastal areas where ports are, right? Normally they use trains, right? Because we're talking here trailer. So yes, you have trailer trucks, but if you have multiple containers, right? You may want to hire the services of the trains that take these containers to the port. And then once it gets to the port, packed on the ship, then it's shipped to Grenada. So the train is one contract with one provider, but that's a different company offering that train service. So you have a contract with them, right? And the exporter will be handling those on your behalf since they are based in that country, right? And then you have the ship now, which will be taking the container to Grenada. So that's another contract, and a different mode, right? So we have land transport and then we have sea transport, two different modes. And then we have getting the container from the ship when when it gets into Grenada port, right? There has to be now a truck, trailer truck, that will take the container um, to the point of consumption, which is the business that you're doing that for. So each mode here, right, has a different provider, and each provider has a different contract, right, that they are responsible for completing, right? But it is one single journey, but all different providers. Then we have the multimodal category of transportation. And this involves movement of cargo again from origin to destination, obviously. So we're moving goods from one point to the next. And we're also using several modes because, especially when you're shipping overseas, it becomes very impossible to use one mode, right? So we see here that whether you're using intermodal or multimodal, there are several modes that are being utilized, right? Which mean method of transporting. Um, However, each of these modes have a different transporter mode, but it's a single contract. So you are giving a single carrier a contract to fulfill the entire journey. And a very good example of this is, let's say, Amazon, right? We know that they are an e-commerce company. Now, they have their transport means, but as you see in the video posted at the end, it is not sufficient for the level of marketing that they're doing, right? So they often contract the services of other companies to handle their logistics, meaning their transportation. And FedEx is a very good example of a company that does these sort of contracts, multimodal contracts. So they have multimodal operations offered to other companies. So FedEx, for instance, right? They are known to FedEx has about 600 plus of their own planes, yeah, and I assume probably double that of the land transport for getting goods around. And they are in many countries in the world, right? Probably hundreds of countries in the world, if not more, right? So in this example, when a good is ordered, let's say Amazon contracted FedEx to deliver an order, right? And of course, it's not just one order that is being sent, right? So if Amazon have, let's say, 200 orders that is bound for outbound for Grenada, then they're going to hire the service of the company now because FedEx has their distribution points in many countries, so that is a very good company to use, right? So they will give the contract to FedEx. FedEx is going to use their land transport, which will be the trucks now, to get the goods from Amazon, right? The 200 packages. Then they're going to use their air transport, their planes. They do have their own planes. They're going to transport that now to Grenada, right? And when the goods get to Grenada, it's going to be driven by FedEx trucks again or buses to the Grenada distribution point. And then the bus or whatever means of transport that they have to get it to the consumer now, they would deliver, right? And we know that this company often do ground delivery, um, unless the pricing is not included in that. So of course, it's all about the pricing and what method you choose as the person that is hiring the company. So this is a perfect example of multimodal where different means of transport are used, yes, but one carrier handles the entire journey, but they may use different modes, but they are responsible through a single contract for the entire journey, right? So, talking about the methods of transporting, although we've seen them in all the examples that I've given, right? Cargo can be handled using four main means, but there are, a few others that will add to it. So the main ones are road, water or sea, railway, airway, right? So when companies want to transport their goods, they have the road transport, they have the water or sea transport, the railway, and the air. So land transport often involves movement of goods and passengers on land. So cargo meaning goods and passengers, right? So whether it be a truck or a bus or a delivery motorbike, right? Or a taxi car, right? On land. And now rail also includes land, right? So that is also part of land. And we also have pipelines, which is also part of land, right? So that is road transport, right? Transporting goods, whether the goods be raw materials or finished goods, right? And then you have um, goods that involve human cargo, right? Now, in some countries, we see roads being developed for different means of um, or different aspects, right, or uses. So you have like the highways that are predominantly for the regular traffic, and then in some countries you have special roads that are designed for probably more of the heavy duty transport. So it all depends on the roadway that is developed in that country. Railway, which is part of land, also does has a major role to play in cargo handling, right? So, especially when you're getting very bulky goods from the seaports, right, into different parts of the country. And we see in larger countries, this plays a very key role in getting goods around. They're very good for bulky, large volume cargo being transported, and it's also used for transport of persons. Pipelines are also used, right? Water supply, petrol, natural gas, they are also transported through pipelines on land. Now, there are some that also flows through the sea, but predominantly onto the land. And then we have water transport. So we're talking here about boats, steamers, right? Ships, cargo ships, right? Whether they transport cargo, goods, or passengers, those are the water, right? Inland or ocean. So you have river, canal boats that do their routes, and then you have the ocean transport for the larger ships that do their routes, and they do more international. Then we have air transport, right, which is known for its very swift means of transporting goods, whether it be planes, or aircraft, as we say, helicopters, right? They are very good for fast means of transporting goods, although not so much bulky, but we do have some air transport that are designed to carry bulky goods based on the nature of it, of course. Um, it may be restricted a bit based on access to landing facilities, landing ports, etc. So, but it's very convenient and very quick. Then we have digital delivery. Now, with technology being implemented within the whole realm of business, we see that we know we depend now on e-commerce for a lot of goods to be transported. So we have companies that digitally deliver goods to their consumers in the form of audio, video, software, games, or services. So, for instance, UE, our own local Caribbean company, they digitally deliver or distribute education, which is the service to their consumers. Persons who use Netflix and iTunes and Amazon services, they get different content. Those are things that are digitally delivered. So that is also considered a means of transport. So all in all, how do supply chain operations benefit companies? Now we see that with supply chain operations, businesses have a very good opportunity to expand their sourcing opportunities. So this is now a global world, as we say, and businesses now have an opportunity to get goods, quality goods, different variety of goods that may have been limited before, more cost-effective goods that they may not have had the option to get before from other countries due to all these um, aspects of the supply chain, right? You're also able to reach new customers and new markets based on the supply chain operations, right? So you're no longer limited to your local market. Now, with all of this, your business can now grow. And even with technology, we see businesses, doing e-commerce. You're now expanding, and this helps to grow your business as you produce more, offer more, and sell more, right? And this also transforms into a better economy. So the economy grows. We see infrastructure developing, as we talked about recently. Businesses are now more competitive, right? And your whole economic environment improves. People's quality of life improve, their standard of living improve. And all of that comes through more jobs being created because as business grows and they produce more, they will be requiring more employees, more skills, right? So they'll be need, let's say, more pilots or more logistic planners, more companies to do logistics handling, more telemarketing personnel, right? So all of this helps to expand the economy while the business expands. However, there are some challenges, right? Supply chain can be very complex. Think about some of the examples that I shared. And when you look at some of the videos, you see that this could be very complex, especially if the business is very large. So there's a lot of handling to be done, logistics planning, logistics handling, dealing with different carriers, managing that process is very complex. And there's greater risk involved, right? You have to think about the risk of disasters. And that is why it's important, as we mentioned earlier, that insurance plays a big role. What happens if there is political instability occurring within the area that you exist? That could also have an impact on you. What if there is economical issues? Look now, we go through a pandemic. Obviously, this is going to have great impact on the logistics and supply chain operations of businesses because a lot of operations have ceased to operate. So this will put a halt or have great impact on operations. Then for companies that are now out there in the global world competing, right, they would have to, you know, be able to handle the competition out there. So Growing, yes, is good. Going out to new markets in the international or regional market is good. But now you have more competition, right, to deal with. And then collecting of information. This becomes very complex also. Because as we said, logistics involves the flow, not just of goods, but also of information. So a lot of businesses have to invest in technology, which can be expensive in the early, to be able to collect information appropriately and make sure it's available. Then we have legal issues. Different countries have different laws. So you have to make sure that you are aware of all the laws that exist in whatever country that you are marketing your goods, and ensure that you do not go against any of these. And counterfeiting also becomes an issue, right? Your goods can be copied, right, illegally. We see companies that are branded, right? You invest in your brand, and then you have companies that are creating imitations of your goods, right? So that can also be a challenge. Now, when market conditions change, that could also cause changes for your business. So, if the goods are not demanded as before, maybe because there is some economic issue or global problem like what we're experiencing now, those could have impact on your supply chain. And lastly, product complexity, especially those dealing with products that change very frequently, like technology related products, cell phones and gadgets and these sorts, right? They become obsolete quite easily, and this can also impact you. So you would always have to be making changes to your products, making changes to your operation, and sometimes even having to update on the whole logistics and supply chain operation just to stay um, up to date, right? So these are some of the challenges. All right, so what I'm going to do, I know I did include the whole ICT, but I decided to separate it a bit just to give you a smaller chunk to digest for this presentation. So I want you to check out these videos. They all look at logistics and supply chain handled by these companies, starting with Amazon, FedEx, and then the last one on Jamaica is more a futuristic plan of developing Jamaica as a logistic hub because of how uniquely positioned they are between the larger countries like the US, etc., and being a good point to collect and store and warehouse and distribute for major companies. Right? So look at these videos, it's going to help you to understand the whole aspect of logistics and supply chain even greater. Look at some of the businesses around you. Look at the businesses that you may work for those who are employees, and think about how logistics are handled, right? As goods um, are passed from one point to the next and then to the consumer, right? So I do hope you enjoyed this one. If you have any questions, please post it in the classroom or reach out to me. Please check out your assignments on Google Classroom and continue to study so that you can succeed at your exam.